Oh, I heard it. Something's going on. All right. Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, April 24th, 2023. I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins.
Here.
Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Olgiati.
Here.
Mrs. Rose.
Here.
Mr. Tominello is asked to be excused. Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkest.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including approval of the regular board meeting minutes of April 10th, 2023, concurrence with the emergency approval of new PA systems at stations 1 and 2 for the fire department, approval of the bills in the amount of $1,018,777.30, and approval of the March 2023 revenue and expenditure report. Unless there's any discussion, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mrs. Rose to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, as discussed, we are asking to add item D2 regarding an invoice from our actuarial service provider, as well as item E2, approval to hire 2 part-time bus drivers for our 2023 summer shuttle. So unless there's anything else, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda with the addition of items D2 and E2.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Badkins to approve the agenda with the 2 additional items. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next, are announcements. I do have a few announcements. The Harrison Township Parks and Recreation Committee is pleased to host their annual road rally this May 20th at 6 p.m. It's a Saturday. The cost is $10 per person. You can find more details and a sign-up sheet on our website. The Harrison Township Public Library presents their annual Shred Day on Saturday, May 6th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. They will accept and destroy up to 2 boxes of paper per person at no charge. There is a charge for any additional boxes. You can see the website for more information on that event. There are some restrictions. I believe they do not accept CDs, as example. Also a reminder that the Harrison Township Public Library recently extended its hours. The new hours, which started April 3rd, are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. With the extension of these hours, the library has added an additional 19 hours of operation. They will also be open earlier for visiting seniors, later for working families, and have more consistent hours that are easier for everyone to remember. For more information about the library events and the new hours and the Shred Day or anything else, you can contact the library director, Melissa Goines, or the community relations manager, Kayla Dimmick, at 586-329-1261. We are accepting reservations for the pavilion. If you're interested in renting the pavilion at Waterfront Park, you can visit the township calendar to see what dates are available, and you can contact us at the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. For more information on these, as well as other township events, you can call the supervisor's office at the number I mentioned, visit our website, harrisontownshipmi.gov, or you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, Harrison TWPMI. Any other announcements? Hearing none, I'd like to recognize and invite our county commissioner, Mrs. Barb Zinner, to the podium for some brief words.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, Board. I have a few days off from meetings, but every day is booked for me. as I think the other supervisors. A few of the commissioners were at a breakfast with the Realtor Board today. Well, Realtor breakfast. There was some information and dialogue. They had speakers about housing and different things. Informative, and there were quite a few people there from around the area. There are a lot of things happening in the county, of course. You see a lot of that in the news. As soon as I leave the boardroom, it all turns right off. I see my info and it all comes back on, but I never remember it when I get here, unfortunately, and I'm sorry about that. Someone asked me today about South River Road, which you probably have mentioned. Is it going to be done this year? As far as I know from a meeting I was at, but I'm not the road department or the executive's office, I was told it's not going to be done until a year from now. I hadn't seen that, but that's what I had heard because of the meeting I was in when I was down there. It's too much to do, and there's just a lot of things, a lot more planning. Residents around there have questions, and so one by one they keep meeting me, and you've spoken to people. I know you have. One of the things that we get to do as commissioners is we have a Green Day event open to the schools. Once a year they come for awards and presentations. I didn't really understand that until I became a commissioner, how much work goes into that, preparation. And I mentioned this before, and in Lance Cruz School District, which is here, of course, the schools that were represented were Lance Cruz Middle School Central, and they had an Emerald Award, which is a very nice award. They're all good awards. And the other one was Yax Elementary School, which received an Evergreen Award, which is the highest award you can have. And what I've surmised, and you may all have had children doing these things, is these schools put a lot of effort into it, and it's yearly. Some schools just do this yearly. And these students, they really get into it, and they learn. They learn stuff that they can use for the rest of their lives. And I made that statement last year, that they may remember some of these things as adults from being in school where their parents may not do gardening. They may not learn about anything in the earth. I just don't know. But I came from farm family, so it was different for me and other people. But it's just really a great thing. And they learn about how to recycle, all of that stuff. I need to take a class on that, honestly. I think we should several people in my age group especially, and others really need to do better. But they really come out of that with a lot of knowledge and get great presentations. And it's nice to see how many schools are represented. It's not just public schools, private schools also. That's really good. We have our Volunteer of the Year presentation this Thursday night. That'll be at Freedom Hill. That's by invitation. And they're doing it a little different. I say the staff coordinates everything. Chair makes the decision and the staff coordinates. You all know how that goes. And we'll be giving out awards for that. And people send in so many presenters, people who deserve these awards. And usually the staff goes through that. Well, this year they gave them to each commissioner district. And, it's just killer because there are so many people who are so worthy. It's all volunteer. They do thousands of hours of work. And, we just live in an area where there are a lot of great people. So Thursday will be that. And we're just moving the government along as much as we can, working with the citizens, doing as much as we can. I've had several calls about the water. People might think they're, because of the news presentations and all with Candace. So I really try to go to everybody's house that emails me or calls me. I always talk to them. And it's a study that's being done now for 2 years. And I try to explain to them that we can't go to everybody, we can't help everybody's yard or everybody's situation. There just isn't money for that. But hopefully, when we figure out what the problem is, we'll be able to do better with it. And sometimes we are able to help. We will see what we can do. And I think that pretty much sums it up for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, moving forward, unless there's any other announcements, we'll move forward to item D1 from the clerk's office. Mr. Witt?
Yes. So before us tonight, we have our revised record retention schedule. So this is something that the deputy clerk had been working on as we're going through the process of scanning all of our different records and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to update everything to be in line with what we're doing, as well as modernizing some of the just older language that was in our procedure for records. Also to clarify for our employees as well what they should be doing as far as destruction and how that process works and that kind of thing. So that's really what the revisions revolve around, adapting technology and sort of updating it for today's use cases.
Any questions, discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to adopt the retention policy.
All right, is there support?
Support.
A motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Brado to revise and update record retention policy 2.21 as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda, item D2 regarding a GRS invoice. Mr. Witt?
Yes. So we're asking that the board consider the approval of the invoices from Gabriel Roder Smith. They are the township's actuary for work related to the audit. This is something for our pension funds as well as our retiree health care, our post-employment benefit fund as well. And although they're for that, they're not a cost of those funds. So that's why the general fund covers them as opposed to going to those individual boards for approval. We have done this in the past. It's a newer requirement due to GASB standards changing and require different reporting. So we're asking the board approve $10,350 for the retiree health care fund work, $5,600 for the fire pension, and $5,500 for the employee pension. The employee pension work isn't done yet, but that price is from the quote and should stay true to that.
Is this gonna be an annual charge, Adam?
I believe that the employee and the fire are, but I want to say there was something about the retiree healthcare where it's done every 2 years or something like that, but I could be pulling the wrong information. But yeah, for the most part.
The thing I would say is that this requirement, or the requirement to do this, is a part of having a, unqualified opinion.
Unqualified opinion.
Right, so in essence, when we go through our audit, if this information isn't a part of our audit, then the auditors would have to give us a qualified opinion or a less than clean opinion saying, well, we don't really know the answer to these questions. So there isn't, I might look at this and saying, is there a decision that we'd have? Well, we really wouldn't make a decision not to pursue a clean audit. The only difference would be whether we would change the actuarial firm, right? So there are other companies that provide these actuarial services. The problem is this board doesn't choose the actuary for those three funds. So there's a fireman's pension board. They control the fireman's pension, an employee pension board that's each is somewhat autonomous, and then a board that oversees the trust fund for the retiree health care savings. So those boards choose GRS. GRS then is the only firm that would be qualified to do this service. We're kind of stuck saying we've got to.
Without exorbitant cost to get caught,
Right.
Completely unreasonable.
Hiring a different actuarial firm would result in a much higher cost.
But
We
that's
had-
not,
we
but that's
could do
not to
that.
say that the state doesn't change the way this is implemented to require something different that's not this costly based on feedback, but as of right now, yeah, it's an annual cost.
And when I began as a trustee, I don't think some of these
No,
requirements weren't a part of the audit.
This was implemented for the first time a couple years ago, so this is a new thing. We did, reach out to them to make sure our invoices are being funneled in the right direction for this project, because they sort of got steered over to the pension systems and we didn't see them until later, so that's why they got added tonight, but we just wanted to make sure that everything got done, so. We hopefully iron that part of it out.
So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. So, this is one of those things, I guess, for lack of a better word, you know, GASB, was it Government Accounting Standards Board?
Yes.
Right? They issue these recurring, or, not recurring, what would you say, from time to time, they issue letters establishing certain standards that a municipality may have to, follow. And so 67, 68, 74, 75 would be examples of those requirements that they say, gotta do this if you wanna, get a clean opinion or unqualified. Any other discussion? Was there a motion? I don't think we had a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
To pay the invoices for the auditing.
All right, for the three funds. All right, is there support?
Support.
I've got a motion by Mrs. Rose with support by Mr. Olgiati, to approve the three invoices for.
It's like buying like windows for your house, where you're like, yeah, I know I have to do it, but it ain't fun to say yes.
Right, yeah, you don't wanna write the check, but we really don't have a choice, frankly, so. And ultimately, really, at this point, we have two invoices and one quote.
Yes.
So we'd be approving up to $5,500 for that employee pension. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda, item E1, regarding human resource assessment. Board members, for several years, we have looked for a vendor that can provide an audit of our human resource practices and policies, or HR policies. Many private sector employers utilize third-party employers to manage payroll and HR issues. Kind of one of those scenarios where you all your employees really work for another company. Because we are a municipality, that's not an option for us. So because of that, we're on our own as far as making sure that the policies and procedures that we follow for employees and human resources kind of fall on ourselves. Raymond is our new auditing firm, and we recently met with Corrine Conley from their HR Solutions team. In discussions, we just kind of mentioned this was something that we look for. We don't have an HR manager or an HR professional, so we're kind of in that smaller size, and obviously, if you're doing something and you really don't realize it, but you're violating some, federal standard or some payroll requirement or some best practice, there is a liability there. So we've asked in the past, multiple firms, law firms, things like that. Seems like there should be a checklist, like these large third-party employers, when we met with them, do you provide this service? No, we really don't. Well, how do we know if we're doing a good job?
Or we do if you hire us to do 13 other things that we weren't ready to give them.
Right. So they do have the ability to provide an assessment of our HR policies and practices, along with recommendations of where we should make changes or improvements. And there's a proposal that was included with the board packet. They listed their hourly rates, and they estimated time that would correlate to about $3,500 to $4,000 to perform the audit. Deficiencies in our HR procedures can result in fines or other liabilities. Therefore, I'm recommending that we contract with Raymond for an HR assessment at a cost not to exceed $5,000. We will coordinate with the accounting department to schedule the work so that it does not conflict with the audit. When we met with the service provider, that was kind of one of the things we looked at. Okay, we don't want to start this in the middle of our audit.
Financial audit.
The financial audit of, because some of the things that Raymond is gonna ask for are gonna fall on our accounts payable person, which is in our accounting office. So kind of, let's make sure we get through one, then move into this, and, so we'll coordinate that, but, the request is, to contract with, Raymond, for an HR assessment at a cost not to exceed $5,000.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Do they assess union versus non-union, positions, and is this something that our legal firm needs to get involved with at all?
No, so first, I think, let's say this, if we have a contract, that's a little bit different. Let's say that there's something that the firefighters agreed to, that we agreed to in a contract, and it's problematic. The exposure there is probably a little more limited because we bargained for that. But the question might be, do we, for example, there are requirements relative to when you have to offer health care to a new employee. If I remember correctly, I believe you can't make an employee, a new hire, wait any more than 90 days. So are we following that? That's one that comes to mind, but there's,
But it is, I mean, it is, even with union employees, they might give recommendations for in the contract, you should modify job descriptions to include this part to make sure you're checking the box for
Correct.
ADA or something like that.
So they will.
They will
get
look at-
involved.
they will
we'll take a look at
include
that,
that,
and
yeah.
all three of our union contracts are up, end of this year.
Yeah.
So as the summer progresses, we're gonna get into negotiations. So we thought this was a good time to take a look at this also, because we could then say, look, we hired a professional firm. They said that Article 27 really doesn't meet, the XYZ policy or this federal standard.
Right.
So we have a chance to kind of address those at the same time. But to put it in, I don't know, plain terms, what scares me is what I don't know. What are we doing today that we shouldn't do, that someone could say, hey, well, that's a violation of this federal act and you're not allowed to do that, right? Well, gosh, I didn't know that, right? So we're reactionary. It wasn't, maybe 2-3 years ago, there was a ballot initiative, I believe, or
Constitutional amendment.
No, the petition drive saying that every employee should, regardless of who, union or non-union, should get a certain amount of sick leave. We reacted to that language. But what's something that we're doing that, 20 years ago, an act was enacted that we have to follow, that someone didn't follow, and we're not following it? I simply stated, I just don't know. And it seems silly to say, well, let's wait and see if somebody catches us, when for $4,000, we can kind of find out what those problems are. It's worth noting that between this firm and potentially our labor, or our law firm, the township attorney and the labor attorney, there could be some things. This could lead to saying, hey, you better clean up these 3 policies. And here's some sample language, but if you want us to write it for you, there could come a cost for that. But clearly, what we're in pursuit of is finding out what are we doing that's non-compliant, if there is something. And if so, let's go about it. If they say to us, hey, this is an area where you're really missing the boat, let's fix it as soon as possible so that we're in compliance and we're, avoid liability. So that's kind of the thought process.
Yeah, I know we're looking for it in the clerk's office, because we're going through a complete rewrite of all our policies and procedures, and a lot of them are HR based, so we're hoping we get a lot of good feedback, because if someone gives you a sample, it's much easier than trying to write from whole cloth
Or not even knowing that you got to address it in the first place.
Right.
That's right.
So, township does not have an HR director. It kind of just falls within each department as they need to hire somebody and they do the best
I wouldn't
they
say it
can.
falls on each department. It falls, primarily it falls between the accounting office, which is oversight with the clerk's office, and the supervisor's office. So I believe statutorily, HR is a function of the supervisor's office.
It is, but like the clerk's office handles payroll, and that just ties nicely with benefits administration, so we oversee that portion of.
We did
This is
have
needed.
HR at one time.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
I remember
So
when
the
we
excellence.
first switched our legal services for our labor attorney, we switched from another firm to Mr. Huth's firm. And I'd asked this very same question of that labor attorney, saying, I'm concerned, like, what are we missing? And he was pretty insightful, something I'll never forget. He said, well, in the last 5 years, how many lawsuits have you suffered due to, inaccurate or incomplete HR practices? And I said, well, none, really. He said, well, if you'd employed an HR professional for the last 4 or 5 years, you'd be out $600,000 to $750,000. So his point was, sometimes the cure
Yeah.
isn't worth the, right?
Exactly.
But in this case, for $4,000, we can find out what we're doing. That's a whole lot cheaper than hiring an HR professional and kind of, and I also believe that, let's just say that after we do this, 6, 8 months, 10 months down the road, somebody does identify something that we missed. I think this is evidential. This is our best effort to try to make sure that we're compliant. So if I did find myself in a situation, I think doing this puts us in a better light, even if we miss something and do have a misstep. At least we're doing the best we can to try to catch it.
And the other nice thing about Ms. Conley, who's the point person from Raymond, she has a municipal background. So she worked in Canton, and I believe she's the mayor of another community. So she has that background because municipalities and the laws that govern it are so different. That exposure, that experience is unique and beneficial for us.
Mr. Hood?
And I was just gonna add, when Ryan Fantuzzi is not running around dodging hand grenades,
Yeah.
some of you may know he was called into service, our labor lawyer, one of them. He does work, these companies, that when a community hires them, there's 3 or 4 of them that do this, if they run into an issue, they call him or Craig Lang, my partner, so, sometimes we're getting involved anyway, just because they point something out or have a question, so they're real good about working with councils.
Good, okay. Any other discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support?
We got a motion by Mr. Brada with support by Mrs. Rose to contract with Raymond for an HR assessment at a cost not to exceed $5,000. We had some discussion. Is there further discussion, board members? No? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Yes, thank you. The question I had is this Raymond, what are their credentials?
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the floor for public comment, and move back to board comment. So, I guess within the last year, the accounting office went through a research, I guess, a search to see. We've been with the same auditing firm for probably a dozen years, I'd guess, somewhere around there. And so they kind of thought, okay, well, we had a good relationship with that auditing firm, but let's take a look. Raymond was ultimately not only the preferred auditing firm when they went through that, but they also were the most competitive firm, if I recall. So we do have an established relationship beginning this year with Raymond. They're kind of seems to me they're a vertically integrated service provider. So they, in addition to providing auditing service, it seems like they also sort of offer some of these other services. So we did go through a vetting process relative to their auditing services. In terms of this HR assessment, as I think we had some correspondence, we've been looking for a firm that could provide this. And frankly, I anticipated it would cost more than this. So knowing that we've already kind of vetted them to see, are they a good firm? They were the preferred firm for auditing services. It seems like, and at this price, $3,500 to $4,000, you know, not to be casual about that sum of money, but that's a relatively, you know, small sum to take a stab at. So, so I don't know if that answers the question. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Brada with support by Mrs. Rose. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda, item E2 regarding summer shuttle bus drivers. Board members, I did distribute 2 applications. One is from Mr. Jerry Klein, and another is from Mrs. Barbara Schock. Each of them are existing bus drivers, and we do have a working relationship with each of them. They expressed an interest in the summer shuttle. As you may recall, it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday shuttle just for the summer months. And so we tend to prefer to hire school bus drivers because they've kind of already gone through a vetting process. Mrs. Schock has been with our district for a number of years. Mr. Klein has a history not only with Lance Cruz, but I believe currently he's with another nearby school district. And Mrs. Iannuzzi, our senior coordinator, went through the process. and our recommendation would be to hire these two individuals as drivers for our summer shuttle. Any discussion, or is there a motion?
Just a question real quick. What is the rate of pay that they'll be starting? And I know we discussed that before, but I just for my own
Yep,
knowledge.
so it's established in our policy. You know, I'm not gonna remember it right offhand, but if we go back in time, we had established a specific dollar amount. And then as of the last two Januaries, whatever that rate of inflation was per the policy, that driver rate has gone up. But it's the same rate for all of our bus drivers. So I believe we've got a tiered, if they have a certain driver's license classification, they get a slightly higher amount. But it isn't, I wanna say, it isn't negotiable. Our policy says this is what the drivers get. And I believe I
I wanna say it's like $15 and change. It was $14.47, and then it got kicked by, with our policy up.
yeah. But whatever that number was board approved, and it's what our other drivers are. So this doesn't pay any more or any less than what our current drivers for the senior shuttle get.
And we are hiring 2 drivers, correct?
Yeah, and when we say hire, so here's kind of the thing with the summer shuttle. Clearly, it's summertime, right? So sometimes folks say, oh, I'm going away for this weekend or that weekend. You know, sometimes it's, I don't want to say performance-based, but you'd rather have, you know, say, for example, 3 drivers that are available. If someone's not available, someone can fill in, but, so it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and sometimes on the Saturday, for example, it's a longer days. You could split it into 2 shifts, depending on what someone's availability is. Ultimately, the recommendation is coming from Mrs. Iannuzzi, based on managing this now for her third year, I believe, at least second year of managing the summer shuttle. So, let's see, I think, did we have her in 21?
Close.
I forget, yeah, this is either a second or third year, but her, basically, based on running the summer shuttle for a year or two, she's thinking she'd like to have 2 individuals that are available to make sure that she can staff that, because you really don't want to cancel the bus service.
Yeah.
Right?
I personally think that's one of the best benefits we give to our residents is the ability to be able to utilize the shuttle, not only for bars and restaurants, but church and Kroger's and everything else. I think
Absolutely. Or transient boaters, if they come into town and are, you know, on a trip, they can use this to go get parts, supplies, things like that, so you get a little bit of everything, so. All right, any more discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to hire the 2 applicants, Jerry Klein Senior and Barbara Schock, for the summer shuttle.
All right, great. Is there a support?
Support.
All right, I heard Mr. Brado. So we got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Brado, to hire these 2 bus drivers. We had some discussion. Is there further? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, next on the agenda is public comments. Public comments can be about any subject that you wish. We ask that you try to limit those to 5 minutes in length.
Yes, sir.
You can.
It's not required, but you're always welcome to.
My name's Henry Tishka. I've been in Harrison Township since 2000. And excuse me, I just came from my exercise class. That's why I'm dressed. I would have dressed more appropriately. I want to thank you for your stewardship of the township. Manage, keep us out of scandal and to my knowledge. Am I being photographed now?
It is being filmed and broadcast.
Okay, thank you.
Live, and then it'll be replayed as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm here about the property that was in the Journal, the announcement. I lived overseas and worked overseas for about a decade, and it always astounded me that anywhere else in Europe, shoreline, like we abuse it. I'm thinking of, for example, Marine City, which have gravel piles on the Bell River. That is an extraordinary waste of prime property. In Europe, you would either have to inherit it or win the lotto to be able to afford property. And the secret's out. Michigan is now on the radar. People are very aware of the worth of our property. And I'm bringing this back to Harrison Township and the property that was described in the article in the Journal. Do you know what I'm referring to? And I did go look at it today. And Harrison Township is in transition. I think that can be evidenced by the evolution of the library. When I moved here in 2000, where's the library? Well, we didn't have one, but we do have one now, and it is expanding, which I'm grateful to see. And I think the properties, I'm living in one of the properties that was described to me, Harrison Township was the old up north. People came from Detroit historically and went duck hunting and that. And I'm living in a house built by one of the Ballard boys. It's a Sears kit house with vertical log siding, and he built it when he came back from World War II. And that's pretty typical of the hunting cottages that were once typical of Harrison Township. But we're a long ways from that, and property values are going. I understand we are like 98% built. And it's in the 90s of properties available for expansion. So properties like the one in this, in the article, they're becoming rare. Those are a jewel, and I was a little bit concerned by some of the language that was used concerning that property, where it was called old. Well, I think being part of the planet Earth, it's old, yes. It's flat. I'm not sure how that devalues the property. The Taj Mahal is located on flat land, as is the White House. Unused, yes, that's good, in my opinion, and expensive, and we're talking $2,000 a year. And the point I'm making is that property is becoming rare, and it is an asset to the township. If that property was somehow rendered for the residents, for example, just throwing this out there as a kayak launch place, that would increase my property value. People would come here to use that launch. They will come here and eat. I think that, especially in the percentage of built properties that we have, that's a real asset. Some of I think, well, another comment that was made was the attorney indicated that they were just asking to change a designation of property. Well, that's kind of a specious argument because, yeah, we're looking to change the designation of the property to get rid of it, dump it. And I am proposing that we not do that. I'm proposing that we explore, and I understand the township is in deficit mode, is that correct? No. That was my lack of understanding. I apologize. That we table, I would say for 1 year, the motion to proceed with changing the designation. And because it's been sitting there for all this time, maybe another year. And I would consider exploring, am I able to make a motion? Is that part of the protocol? Okay. I would request a motion be made or to explore options for that property and both pieces, and to explore the possibility of the beautification committee taking that up, seeking funding, maybe even millage. We didn't have library millage, but we do now. And that impacts the schools and, the whole community benefited from the library. Yeah, it's a cost, but there are benefits from it. Perhaps Metro Parks would be interested, perhaps the DNR. Maybe the county, state, the Conservancy, Michigan United Conservation Club, and even Ducks Unlimited does some very interesting things. They're funding. And I'm not an expert on any of them. I'm trying to make this concept of tabling further action for 1 year appealing to the board so that we can explore some options. Because once we unload it, dump it, it's gone forever. And if you wanted for some reason to buy it back in 10 or 20 years, good luck. Not going to be cheap. That's the end of my comments, unless you have any questions.
It's our policy not to engage in a discussion during
Okay.
public comment. So
Thank you. Thank you for informing.
C. William Bardell, 26-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door. Clean up, fix up, people helping people. I just want to remind everyone to please check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook. Follow, stay up to date on everything that's going on. As far as that property, I sympathize with the resident that this is what's happening here in Harrison Township. This is all because we don't have any ordinance follow-through enforcement in this township. Maybe that's why you got to have an HR guy to see what your jobs are you're really supposed to be doing and how to CYA cover your butt. And you would think that you would get elected and you would know what your jobs are and you would know what you're supposed to be doing, but that's okay. Spend the $5,000 and find out what you're supposed to be doing. As far as this property goes, I don't know why in God's green earth you'd want to give this property back when you need more open green spaces, at least for water for water runoff, not to run off so much, and you have some empty spaces for water absorption. And that seems to be the problem with a lot of suburbs. When they overbuild and they over-densify, that's where you come into water runoffs and so forth. And that's the problem that, that all the suburbs have. For every square mile, you should have a quarter mile of open space for just water absorption. And slow down the runoff. The water runoff is supposed to go into the ground and slowly dissipate into the underground rivers and lakes and then back into the lakes. There's a system there. So to give land back and sell it, that's very counterproductive. And, $2,000 to cut it a year, that's not too bad. The size of lot that is. You just have to enforce people that want to park their Winnebagos out there. And, you just have to do a little enforcement. That's all. They just have to follow through, get the paperwork straight, and just do their work. It's an 8-hour day. There's a lot you can do in 8 hours. And so, yeah, it's a very sad day in Harrison Township when you're giving land back. It's very, very sad. I sympathize with the resident. Yeah, I've been here 26 years, and there was a reason why I moved out here, and I didn't move to West Bloomfield. I didn't move to Grosse Pointe. I didn't move to Oakland Township. I moved here. There was a reason for that. And now, doing this, giving land back, that the whole Harrison Township best-kept secret was flushing it right down the toilet. Giving it all back. Flush it right down the toilet. So, very sad, and I don't think there's any reason for it. You can say, well, if somebody parked a Winnebago, we had to send the ordinance officer out there. I mean, my gosh, you strain his milk. Just do your paperwork, you do your follow-through, and you go have lunch, and then after lunch, you go do your job. There's 8 hours in a day. You can get a lot done in 8 hours. Okay? So appreciate your time. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. I'll do my best to reply to some of the concerns, maybe offer an explanation of how we got to where we are. Old, flat, unused, and expensive, those are writer's terms, so I can't really speak for the author of that article. I don't remember describing the land that way. A big part of understanding why at least I can speak for one board member, myself, why I see 100-foot strip of land a little bit different. We go through a process of zoning. We go through a process of creating a master plan. A big part of zoning is trying to make sure that we have compatible uses next to each other. So without zoning, I suppose somebody could say, well, right next to your home, I'm going to build a factory. You say, well, wait a minute, that's not compatible. We kind of like to put our residential areas in one area, maybe commercial areas, in a certain area. We want to make sure that, what we allow to occur on one space is compatible with the immediate surrounding space. So just in no particular order, there was a mention made of a kayak launch. There are other parcels like this that the township, I wouldn't say they own, but that are rights of way that were dedicated for this use. And in some cases, parcels like this that are along the lake have other uses. For example, there's a right of way toward the end of South River where the Pride of Michigan, which is the Sea Cadets, where they keep their boat, it's a county road right of way. And it was dedicated as such, and the county has allowed them to use that space. So that doesn't generate tax revenue. It's surrounded primarily by marinas. It's a waterfront district, but that's a compatible use. And frankly, I think that's an asset. That's a gem in our township. Not only the physical presence. I mean, it's a neat thing to see the boat there, but the work that they do and the role that they play in helping to develop an interest in the water and diving and sailing amongst our youth. I think when you come out of that program, if you go into the military, you join as an officer. You join, just similar to an Eagle Scout with an advanced rank. So that would be an example of a small strip of land that does have value in that sense. Probably a 1/10 of a mile from this 100-foot strip of land to the east, there's another, I believe it's an 80-foot width parcel that we've identified with the county as a part of their planning that could potentially be a kayak launch. But interestingly, on that very same parcel, there's stormwater assets that flow through that. And there's also, I believe it's a sewer crossing, because we do push sanitary sewer flow from North River southward underneath the river to South River. So that's an area where that particular parcel is already encumbered with some underground assets, and it really couldn't be repurposed for too much of anything else, but it could be repurposed for something like a kayak launch. So there is a consideration there. It's important, though, to understand this board, prior boards, but the Board of Trustees that served before us, made a pretty significant commitment in purchasing 155 acres in the center of the township between Metro Parkway and Jefferson. And, one might argue that could be developed, but the board made a purchase. There's some old growth timbers. There's a very old tree in there. We've got some stormwater that flows through there. We recently applied for a grant of $1 million to develop stormwater storage there, and also to enhance the habitat in that area. And when we talk about open space, a majority of municipalities in southeastern Michigan do not have a metro park inside their borders, but we do have Lake St. Clair Metro Park, and we have the North Marsh and the South or Point Rosa Marsh, which, although that isn't township land, it's land that's there, in perpetuity, to satisfy stormwater, open space, wildlife habitat, so forth. The difficult challenge here is, there was a mention made, maybe the Metro Parks or the DNR or Ducks Unlimited would be interested in this land. It's been my experience that they're not really looking for a 100 strip 100-foot wide strip of land between two residential uses. They're looking for acreage, they're looking for an area that could be developed or enhanced. But the reason why I proposed this to the board is because this, relatively speaking, narrow strip of land, 100 foot of land, I guess the argument I might make is for the residents who spoke or for anyone else, how would you feel if I bought the house next to your house, bulldozed it, and said I'm putting in a park there, nestled between two other houses? You might say, well, wait a minute, this isn't really a compatible use. We do have right across the street from this strip of land a triangular parcel. It is a park. There's some playground equipment there. There's a sidewalk there and a dog waste station. So it isn't as if we're ignoring that need. The difficulty is, I'm concerned that if we were to propose to try to do something with this 100-foot strip of land, it would be difficult to find a use that's available to the public that would also be compatible with residential properties on either side. So I understand the concerns. I think the difference here is if someone came to us and said, we need to take a look at a way to enhance wildlife habitat or nature trails in the 170 acres that we own, through the center of the township, just south of Metro Parkway. That's an area where you could, Ducks Unlimited, I'm sure would be interested. HCMA, if we partnered with them, or the DNR, that's a parcel of land that would have enough size and enough environmental value where we could do something. But a 100-foot strip of land, it made sense 100 years ago to dedicate these pieces. And it isn't as if the cost of $2,200 a year to mow the grass is burdensome. But it would make more sense if I knew that in the next 5 to 10 years, there's a use for that land that would benefit the residents and not be a drag or a nuisance to the surrounding homeowners. But, in my opinion, it makes no more sense to try to develop this 100-foot strip for public use any more than any other residential platted lot in Harrison Township. And it's that reason why we brought this. And again, we could agree to disagree, but I emphasize there are other areas in the township, some of which are owned. Probably the largest vacant parcel of land is owned by Harrison Township and was purchased by this township in order to preserve some of that open space and not see the whole thing developed. Whether or not there eventually is something built on those 200-foot little strips, I think a majority of our residents probably drive by and assume they're just vacant lots that someone owns. They don't see them as a potential future park or place for public access. So, just my opinion for whatever it's worth. So, any other discussion? Any other public board comments?
I do have one thing. Saturday, the beautification committee had their cleanup.
Yep.
It was over 35 people there, and got cut short, a little bit short by the rain, but it was attended very well. A lot of young folks attended. It was pretty impressive. So, just wanted to make a shout out to those folks that showed up and braved the
elements.
the fall weather.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, and our commissioner made comment of that earlier about talking about green and, the schools that achieved, emerald status, things like that. As, when we're of varying ages here, but when we were younger, we might have taken kind of had an education in what's the best thing. And when we proposed some of our ideas to our grandparents, we don't do things that way. This is how we do things. So I think it's important to teach young people, to see young people out cleaning up trash. It's awesome. To teach them about the value of recycling and being, conscientious of the environment. It's those generational changes that, 2-3 generations from now, something that we take for granted, someone's gonna say, oh no, you can't do it that way. People change over time in their thinking, and I'd like to think we're more environmentally responsible than, a few generations ago, but a few generations from now, there'll be folks that look at what we're doing and say, oh man, you were doing it wrong, you could have done even better. So I think educating the youth is a good way to get that gradual generational shift. All right, any other board comments? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, got a motion with support to adjourn, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board, meeting adjourned.